So, long time ago, when I was a psychiatry resident in India, I would see people who would come in with paralysis, weaknesses, fits, with no medical causes known. They had mental health conditions. We would sit and talk, and they would get a slow drip of an anesthetic drug. Within 1 or 2 sessions, they would make almost complete recoveries. It was remarkable, beautiful. And unknowingly, as a student then, I saw the future of medicine-assisted therapy. And then I moved to the West. And for some strange reason, I just shelved this. I thought nobody would believe me. Now, how many of you know of people, perhaps yourselves included, who have not responded to treatments with mental health issues, partially responded, or the response was too slow? I invite you to just raise your hands. Okay, so there are a few hands going up there. Yeah. So mental health is a personal and economic adversity. In the year 2020, the world lost $1 trillion worth of disability days, or GDP, to mental health. It was close to the market cap of Google in January 1990 that year, and the GDP of Saudi Arabia. This figure is projected to go up to 16 trillion in 2030. Can you imagine that? And guess what? Our treatments, the best treatments, if they are accessible, help 50% of the people. 1/3 of people with mental health problems do not respond at all, which is shocking. That's a huge number of people. Common treatments, such as antidepressants, have side effects. A lot of my patients tell me they have emotional numbing. By the way, I'm a psychiatrist, so I do prescribe drugs. So they also experience sexual side effects. And did you know, by the way, you can check the literature, that the probability of having a sexual side effect with antidepressants like Prozac is higher than the probability of mood improvement. Not often talked about. So it's strange. This is a situation where we could say to people, if we were honest, here's a pill. It may or may not improve your mood, but it'll sure change your sex life. Okay, so mental health conditions are not diseases. Biology cannot completely explain it. There are huge variations across the world with mental health conditions. If we look at mental health conditions, they're not like lung cancers, malaria. They are diseases. These are rigidities of mind. And the rigidity of mind can be helped through very effective psychotherapies. I started my career working in psychopharmacology, and then I started learning psychotherapies, and the changes in people I saw was incredible. So I went further into this and tried to understand this more. Now, experience changes mind. People think sitting and talking to people changes minds. People have talked to a lot of people for a long period of time. It's the experiences they have in psychotherapy sessions and outside the session which changes minds. And this is incremental. So E is for experience. This is incremental. And over time, you see big changes, but it takes time. I'm giving you 2 examples from our work. These are 2 people who were suffering with complex depression and had not responded to treatments for years. We set things aside, did a lot of good work with them. One responded in 6 months, and the other person took 14 months. I think that's a lot of time. Imagine if we could offer something which would help these people in perhaps hours, days, and weeks, and not in terms of years and months. Wouldn't that be great? So medicine-assisted psychotherapy could be that thing. That which was the thing which I experienced in my youth when I was treating people. It may invert the process. There could be a rapid experiential change because experience changes people and changes minds. Of combination of medicine and therapy, this is no just take the pill and you'll be better cure. And there's a cascade of changes after that when people don't need the medicine, only therapy. Think of the people who have mental health conditions. How often we hear them being told patronizing things like, changes take time, and nobody tells them when that time would come. And I think we are at a time, the time is now. We have to do something about this. Most of the medications used now are psychedelics. Most of you probably know what psychedelics are. Psyche meaning the mind, and delos is revealing. So these are mind-revealing drugs. And when people take this, for a few hours, they are in an altered state of consciousness. And if well sort of worked through that, it could create transformations in those few hours. And then they can have more therapy. So the classic psychedelics are plant medicines like psilocybin, DMT, ibogaine. You've heard about that. And LSD is the synthetic version. Ketamine and MDMA are sort of related to psychedelics. Ketamine is an anesthetic, and MDMA is a party drug, pure form called ecstasy. Let's look at the outcomes. Psilocybin therapy is for depression, so psilocybin plus psychotherapy. You can see across these 4 studies, across different countries, the rapidity of effect. That's one thing common to all of these studies. Rapidity of improvement in depression within days. Compare that to the current antidepressants. And in the last study, at the bottom right, conducted in Canada, these were people who had not responded to treatments for years, standard treatments, and you can see the response there. We know that ketamine decreases suicidal thinking and rapidly in depression. But now there are signals that other psychedelic drugs like psilocybin, ayahuasca may do the same. And this is something which we have never seen in mental health before, in the history of treatments in mental health. This is a bird's eye view of outcomes with these medications. Now, granted that we don't have big studies, not too many studies have been done, but if you look at the recovery rates and improvement rates, they're far superior to what we are achieving now. And really interesting fact is, these drugs may have been thought of drugs of addiction, but look at that. These may be surprisingly our sort of solution to treating the rampant addiction. Even before mental health issues will outpace the problems we're facing, it'll be addictions that we'll have to consider. But here's the rub. Don't do this at home. These drugs produce powerful experiences, which can be frightening. And you need good therapeutic guidance to benefit from them. Doing ecstasy in a party helped nobody with PTSD or post-traumatic stress disorder. That's well known. So moving forward, let's look at what happens in the session. In the session of psychedelic-assisted or medicine-assisted psychotherapy, people are encouraged to sit or lie down. They have support of 2 therapists. They close their eyes or wear masks on, eye masks. They listen to a very carefully designed list of music, playlist of music, which makes them go inwards. Powerful experiences may happen. Emotions, memories, traumas may surface. That's why the therapists are there. People also report mystical experiences like oneness, timelessness, connection to themselves and others. Cancer patients who are suffering from end-of-life despair, when they were treated with psilocybin-assisted therapy, reported a sense of sacredness. And many of these people were not religious. They didn't have any spiritual beliefs. Now, mystical experiences predict good outcomes, but even without that, people seem to have profound changes. And people often have difficult times on these drugs. That's what's not known. But during the therapy process, they acknowledged that this was one of the most significant experiences in their life, as much as childbirth, death, and even more. So there's something here. Now, that is the crucible for change, even when there is difficulties. And I would like to read out the account of one of the patients from one of the trial. There was a lot of sadness, really, really deep sadness, the loss, the grief. It was love and sadness together and letting go. I could feel the grief and then let it go because holding on to it was hurting me, holding me back. It was a process of unblocking. Once people are coming out of the intense phase, like the peak experience shown there, the therapists work on integrating these experiences to help them make sense and meaning out of it. This is then applied to day-to-day life in the next few weeks to make significant changes. This whole cycle would take about a month, and about up to 3 cycles have been used in standard treatment trials. That is far shorter than standard treatments we have seen for mental health so far. What happens in these phases? Well, people appear to have a significant change in their brain. The brain centers start talking to each other. And that's a mathematical model of the brain connections. And this probably shakes up people's existing rigid beliefs, which is almost like laying new tracks in the snow. There's an anecdote of a person, a normal person, who was undergoing these trials in the sense to see the effect of MDMA in volunteers. He didn't know he was getting MDMA. He was a high-ranking member of a white supremacist organization. After he received the drug, he didn't even know he was getting it because it could have been a placebo. He came out and just he was shocked how much hatred it filled his life. And he changed over. This was in 2020 in Chicago. He decided to set up organization to bring together people of different colors and bring some kind of friendship between people. This is a state when we start thinking about our own life, or when our minds are wandering. Certain areas in the brain called default mode network light up. This also happens in depression. When people are giving psilocybin, or when they are meditating, mindfulness meditation, the default mode network activity goes down. And this is associated with an increased sense of well-being. So let's try that. So I invite you to close your eyes just for a moment. Think about your life, maybe past few days, just anything in general about your life. And now I invite you to expand your awareness with eyes closed to just get a taste of this room. Let your awareness fill this room. Be here, be in the present moment. Now you can open your eyes. Perhaps you notice the difference between the self-tin state and the expanded awareness state. In such states, people report they connect more to people, they connect more to nature, and they connect more to life itself. As Anne Lamott says, almost everything will work again if you unplug it for a few minutes, including you. And folks, this is the rebooted effect, and that during therapy, it's for several hours. And the brain grows. We noticed that people within hours have neurochemical changes, but within the next few days, the neurons grow new branches and they talk to each other more. This is almost like children having critical periods of growth when they can learn new languages and do fantastic new skills. These drugs reopen those critical growth phases in adult brains. They've done experiments in rats. They've done studies with people with autism and social anxiety with MDMA, and they show remarkable improvement. In fact, this brain remodeling effect is being looked into for cures for things like dementia, stroke. But what about the risks? Here you have it before you. Emergency room visits and overdose deaths, 2022. Where are the psychedelic drugs here? So the numbers might be at the most in single digits when we look at the UK data. And interestingly, in our addiction clinics, we don't see people coming with addiction to these drugs. They're coming with opiate addictions, alcohol addictions. So how do we keep this safe? Let's learn from the indigenous people, the knowledge keepers of these drugs. They use these as medicines. This was considered sacred. It was used for life-enhancing purposes, done in the context of a community. And there was always a spiritual guide. This was not a party time drug for them. They would not use it recreationally and not even use it daily. There was some kind of sanctity with this. And I think we should follow those principles in using these drugs for the benefit of people who are suffering with mental health problems. And you can see this future is not far. And look at the number of conditions that might be helped by these. But you know what? We need more research, absolutely. And we need proper regulations, just like we regulate everything else. Antibiotics, for instance. But what keeps me up at night, let's say that we have the research, we have the regulation. How do we quality test and roll it out so that it helps people reliably rather than some kind of shoot from the hip approach? Competence. Therapists need to be competent in mental health disorders and psychotherapy to do this type of work. Compassionate wisdom. These drugs are telling us about parts of human nature we haven't studied in medical school or in mental health training. So we need to sort of learn this with respect. Change. I'm very hard-nosed about measuring change. How do we measure change in people's inner lives and people's outer lives, like jobs, relationships, and frankly, does it get people to do their laundry and dishes more regularly? Well, Jack Confield, the mindfulness teacher, said, after ecstasy, the laundry. Thank you.